Hello, and welcome to the first online segment of the Kentucky Supported Employment Core Training Series. This session will provide an overview of IPS Supported Employment, the Voc Rehab process, and what is involved in this service. Following completion of all of your online segments, you will attend Session 1 and Session 2 in person in Lexington. There are three types of supported employment funded by the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation in Kentucky: traditional, IPS, and customized. Customized is a service that can be performed per the Voc Rehab Service Fee Memorandum when the employment specialist has attended additional training and received certification. However, as we talk in the in-person sessions, those are tools that can be applicable to anybody. Traditional supported employment is a supported employment service provided by someone who isn't billing for the customized service and who is not a part of an IPS program. This training will focus on IPS, Individualized Placement and Support. The goal of supported employment is always to help someone who has a significant disability figure out what a good job could be, help them get that job, and support them to maintain the job and move forward in their career. As you will continue to learn, supported employment is far more than asking someone where they want to work and helping them fill out applications. This training series will provide context and direction for your work to help people who too often have had low expectations and perhaps been presumed unemployable to find good work. The key to supported employment is what we call the career profile phase. It's this idea of taking time to really get to know the job seeker so that you can then go out and represent the person well to a potential employer. The how-tos of how to do all the tasks in supported employment will be covered in much more depth in the in-person sessions. Supported employment is a service funded initially by the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation that supports someone to find what is defined as competitive integrated employment. This means the work will be done in a typical business where people without disabilities also work, making the prevailing wage always at least the minimum wage. It is not a service to help people find a job at businesses that specifically hire people with disabilities or just people with other mental illness. What makes IPS supported employment unique is the Fidelity scale that your agency follows in order to show your practice is in line with the evidence-based model of IPS supported employment. Your supervisor can show you more specifics about the Fidelity scale. However, here are a few key points. Zero exclusion means that when somebody says they want to work, your program will help them find a job, regardless of other issues that are currently going on in their life. Rapid job search is the goal is to keep momentum. So the career profile has a quick turnaround and you're expected to be talking to employers within 30 days on behalf of that job seeker. Even if you aren't sure where the person will work, you should be conducting informational interviews to learn more about companies to assess if it could be a good match with what you've learned of the job seeker's interests, skills, and support needs. You are an active part of the treatment team. This means that you're a part of your in-agency treatment team so that work, other treatments, and supports are all on the same page. You also have regularly scheduled meetings with your VR counselor in order to help this process go smoothly for all job seekers. Vocational Rehabilitation is who pays for the initial cost of supported employment in Kentucky. This agency, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, also is referred to as Vocational Rehabilitation, VR, OVR, or Voc Rehab. While the job seeker you're working with may have started receiving services for the agency where you're employed, because employment is funded through Voc Rehab, you'll need to help that person become a client of Voc Rehab, or a consumer as they often call it, and then they'll be referred back to your IPS program. Everyone starts supported employment at Vocational Rehabilitation because the charge of that state agency is to help people with some sort of impact of disability re-enter the workforce or to enter that workforce. So because they will fund this service, everyone starts as a client of Voc Rehab. I want you to make sure that you can find and access supported employment process and documentation to turn into the VR counselor. Along with this online training segments, you received a link to an online Dropbox full of a wide variety of resources and information about the training and about providing IPS supported employment. In that Dropbox, you'll find a folder titled VR Documentation and Process. Within that folder is another folder called IPS Supported Employment. Here you will find this form and all of the relevant documentation that will need to be turned into Voc Rehab. The sequence of services through Voc Rehab would be the referral, meaning if you know someone in your agency that wants to work, you refer them to Voc Rehab, and then you would get that back. You'll complete the career profile, where you're learning all about this person. You'll turn that and the job search plan in and begin job development. This is when you're going out, talking to employers, having informational interviews, or providing those supports in the background so someone come out and have conversations with potential employers. Once they get the job, you can help make sure they have everything they need on the first day, that they learn the job, that they make connections, and then ongoing supports. These two slides also show you the documentation and billing that goes along with these sequence of services. When someone expresses a desire to work, you want to have them call your local Voc Rehab office to schedule an appointment for eligibility. You may go with them to that appointment, or they might go on their own or with another family member or friend. It is wise to advise the job seeker to take as much of this information as possible with them to Voc Rehab, as it will speed up the eligibility process. The counselor will need to learn all of this information to document the disability and make sure that this person, one, qualifies for vocational rehabilitation services, and two, that they are eligible for IPS supported employment. Here are some guidelines for anyone applying for VR services. The counselor is the person responsible for determining eligibility. Once this decision has been made, they will be referred back to your agency. VR offers a wide variety of services. This core training series that you're a part of is going to focus specifically on supported employment. Just to note, eligibility must be determined within 60 days, or the job seeker must sign a waiver for extension. This often happens much quicker, and the more information that person can take with them to that first meeting, the more quickly that can happen, particularly with IPS and the nature of rapid job search. We're going to go into this list more in depth throughout this online segment of the training. So just look over the screen here at the sequence of documentation that occurs in supported employment. From getting to know the person, to getting a job, to supporting them on the job to make sure that they're stable and independent. In your Dropbox is this list. There's also a flowchart that shows the same information, just in a different format. These are handy tools for you to have as you get started in this work. The first process in supported employment is the career profile phase. Career profile is the term of the document that will be used to summarize everything you've learned about this job seeker during this first phase of service. And again, you can find these and all other documentation in your Dropbox. The career profile must be submitted within 15 days of having received the authorization, and it's a summary of what you've learned during this process. While it appears to be a checklist, it is not just a series of questions to be asked. It is information that you'll need to gather, and the questions can be used to prompt you to start conversations with job seekers in a casual way so that you can gain more information. The information you compile in the career profile and the job search plan that you set will lead you once you are ready into the next phase of job development. So all of this information really should prepare you and the job seeker for actively looking for work. This is all information about the career profile put out by IPS Supported Employment. It really is about listening with openness to somebody's story. What is it that's going on in their life, and what's it going to take for them to be successful? Open-ended questions can be really helpful. The questions in the career profile, again, can be a guide, but make sure that the process is conversational and that you meet over several different meetings. You want to make sure that you're hospitable, check on how the person feels, and that they really are engaged in this conversation and giving you information. It takes some time to build rapport with people. This is a copy of the job search plan. This is what will be done and turned in along with that career profile. The career profile has a lot of information about that job seeker. The job search plan also summarizes that briefly under consumer goals and then sets out objectives as to where you plan to look for work, what you're looking for, and who's going to make that contact, whether it's going to be you or whether it's going to be the job seeker, or if there's someone else in their life that might be reaching out and giving you an in with that employer on their behalf. Once the career profile has been accepted, it's time to start job development. And again, you have 15 days to complete the career profile and turn that in to the Voc Rehab counselor. When you turn in the career profile and the job search plan, you want to attach that with an invoice for $450. Once it's approved, you move into job development, and you will document each activity and meeting with a job development note that gets turned into the VR counselor. These notes get turned in on a monthly basis. Because the career profile only takes 15 days from authorization to turning in, they do not require you to turn in notes on a regular basis. I would encourage you to make sure that you are keeping some sort of documentation on those meetings and getting to know people. And job development, the notes get turned in on a monthly basis, which means all of your notes for October, for example, will need to be turned in by the 5th of November. They give you that 5-day grace period. And these notes are going to reflect what you're doing to find a job that fits what you have learned about this individual and the type of business that's going to be most successful. All that information you gain during the career profile process is what you're going to act upon now during job development. Once somebody gets a job, you're going to turn in your notes up to that point in the month, a work summary job start plan, and an invoice for $900 made payable to your agency after the first day of employment. During this phase, you might be going out representing a job seeker, asking about the business, what's important to them, what their hiring needs are, what background and education people need, or you might be going out with the job seeker, the two of you together, in which case you want to understand the roles and who's going to lead and how you explain your presence. Or it could be that the job seeker doesn't plan to disclose that they have a disability or a mental illness. They don't plan to tell the employer that you exist and that you provide supports for them in the background, which is perfectly acceptable. And then you're going to do everything in the background. So help the job seeker be prepared for meetings with the employer on his or her own. Again, one point in the fidelity scale, particular to job development, is that there is the expectation that you will make 6 face-to-face contacts per week with someone who has hiring responsibility within a company. If you are working with job seekers who will not disclose and you are not representing them, that means you're collecting that information ahead of time and then going back and talking to your job seekers about what you learned, letting them know the expectations, the hiring requirements, the pace, the culture, what the personalities are like, so that you all can have a conversation as to whether you think it might be a good fit and if they could be interested in applying. Refer to these as informational interviews, and it can be a wonderful way to gain information about a business and help assess for that fit. This is what the Voc Rehab job development note looks like. You can see the job seeker's name, the vocational interest area. This is the vocational goal that was identified in the career profile, and where the counselor sets the IPE, the Individualized Plan for Employment. Job development activity, what was it you were doing during this time? Did you go out to a business together? Maybe you were working on mock interviews so that they were prepared for the interview process. Maybe you were working on resumes and making sure that it's ready to be passed out to employers. And then what was the purpose for this activity, or why were you at this particular place of employment? So you can always tie it back to that career profile and the job search plan. And then your results, the bulk of what you learned during this time, and then your next steps. And the more specific you can be in the next steps, the better, as it increases your momentum and decreases those time lapses between appointments. As you see the italics on this form, those are prompts so that you understand what is expected and what needs to go into each section of the note. Once somebody gets a job, call the Voc Rehab counselor and let them know. After the first day of work is when you will turn the other documentation in, not when they're offered the job, but after that first day of work. The work summary job start plan is going to detail the information listed below, and then you also have a job support plan that you turn into the counselor. This is the work summary job start plan. It details the job, the employer, the supervisor, how much they're paid, what the hours are, the job description, which you can write up here, or if you have a written job description from the company, you can just attach it to this. What sort of benefits will they receive? Another part of IPS supported employment is meeting with a benefits counselor. So you should have had that person already meet with a benefits counselor so they know how this paycheck might impact other types of government public benefits that they receive. The job support plan, shown here, identifies the person's job title and duties, what sort of contact you might have with a supervisor. Often this is based upon whether they have disclosed your presence or not, and then what that might look like at first. Are there specific things that the employee is going to need your help with? If you're doing everything from the background because they haven't disclosed, then obviously none of that will be at the job site. It might be that they need someone to check in with on a regular basis, and you might do that through instant messaging or text messaging. It might be meeting for coffee. It might be reminders about motivation in the morning as to why someone's getting up and needs to get up and get out the door and get to work that day. It's going to be really individualized around that particular person that you're working with. And then any other supports that they might be using and relying on and getting back into the workforce. It might be family members, it might be a case manager, or other support people in their life as well. There is the expectation from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation that you will touch base with a supported employee at least twice a month, and that one of those should be in person. In IPS, it is your responsibility as the employment specialist for this regular touch base with somebody until you transition support to the team. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The stable employment activity note is what gets turned into the Voc Rehab counselor from day 1 on the job through day 90. You will continue to keep these notes from day 91 to day 180, but you can keep them in your own file at that point. Again, you see the activity, purpose, results, and next steps, same type of format as the job development notes, and the italicized parts here will point you as to what you need to be including here. This is just letting you have a record, and also the VR counselor see the record of how the job is going as somebody's getting used to it, maybe what those additional stressors are and how they're coping with that, what kind of difficulties they're having, and what kind of assists you're providing them with or helping them find. At 30 days on the job, you'll complete a 30-day stable employment summary and send that into the counselor along with an invoice for $1,000 to be made payable to your agency. At 60 days on the job, you turn in another summary. This one we call the long-term support plan. At this point, the employee has been on the job for 2 months and everyone knows a lot more about the expectations and coworkers and routines. Long-term support is what makes all of supported employment unique. It needs to be instrumental and proactive rather than an afterthought, and so this is your chance to form a plan about how this employee is going to be supported over the long term. Here's the information that goes into the long-term support plan. What are the frequency and description of on-site services and supports provided by you? And then a description and frequency of the off-site supports and services as well. Here you want to list a description of natural supports. Everybody has natural supports on the job. They're those people and things that are there at work that help us to be able to do our job better. A natural support is a person or a prompt that already exists within the workplace. You are not a natural support. We are paid to help people in this role. So a natural support would be a coworker or something that's there to lend assistance and that would typically be there. However, you might be instrumental in making those connections and say somebody could really benefit from having a mentor that's already a part of that job, somebody that they can go and meet with on a regular basis or that they can go to and ask questions that they might not want to ask in a larger group meeting. If that business doesn't have a mentor-mentee program, then that might be something, if you're a part of helping them get the job and the employer knows you, then you might be able to help develop that for that particular employee. Does the person have additional goals at this job? Maybe they took this particular job in order to get their foot in the door. You always want to make sure what do they need to do to reach that next level in the business that they really want. Or maybe they're going to look at taking on new tasks. Now that they're comfortable in this job and realize that they can do it, are there additional things that they can take on? Maybe they want to increase their hours. Or it could be that after a while, they want to start to look for something else, but this was a good first job into the workforce. These are things that you want to think about doing. At 90 days on the job, you want to send in a 90-day summary to the Voc Rehab counselor. The format looks just like the 30-day summary, except it says 90-day at the top. And again, you can find that in the drop box associated with this training. Where it asks for total time spent, that's all the time you spent actually with or talking with that person, a supervisor or another support in their life during those days 60 to 90. You would turn in the day 90 summary, the stable activity notes from day 60 to day 90, along with an invoice for your agency for $2,000. So you received $1,000 at 30 days on the job, $2,000 at 60 days on the job, and then this is your final $2,000 payment from Voc Rehab at 90 days on the job. While you have already received, your agency has received the final outcome fee from Voc Rehab, per federal guidelines, you're required to turn in monthly summaries at 120 days on the job, 150 days, and 180 days on the job. And those monthly summaries go to the Voc Rehab counselor. At 180 stable days on the job, the VR counselor will close out this case as a successful employment outcome. Documentation post 180 days, when you're not having to necessarily use that stable employment activity note, might be up to your own agency. Your agency might have a form that they would prefer that you use, but you need to make sure that you have some format of keeping records when you check up with people over time. Once somebody is stable on the job and you no longer need to be there regularly or checking in twice a month, then you may complete this plan and transition that idea of long-term support back to the treatment team. That means that maybe the prescriber or the therapist or a case manager who is in more regular contact can ask about work and see how things are going. If it is found out that he or she is having difficulty at work, or maybe they or someone on the treatment team will notify you, then they will come right back onto your caseload. If someone loses their job, they come right back onto your caseload to find another. It's important to note that your caseload then might go over 20, which is the Fidelity limit, but you are responsible for long-term supports. So every now and then your caseload might get a little bit higher when this happens. But once they're stable, you can again transition supports back to the team. These are some expectations set in the contract between your agency and the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. All agencies are expected to accept at least 5 new referrals per year. That's not per person and employment specialist, that's for your entire agency. The thing that you need to pay particular attention to is that all supported employment staff must receive 15 hours of continuing education each year, and that follows the VR contract year, which is July 1st through June 30th. Coming through this core training series will give you more than 15 hours of training. So you're going to be set for that requirement until July 1st of the next year, at which point you will need to make sure that you seek out and have documentation showing that you've attended training specifically related to disability or mental illness and employment. There's an annual IPS conference each year. Those hours count toward training. Once you've come through this training, you'll be on an email list that I maintain, and we'll send out all kinds of opportunities for training. Some of those are in person, some of them are online, some of the online ones are at a specific time that you would log into, and some are pre-recorded and you can listen at your own time schedule. Some of them have registration fees, some of them are free. Just know that there's ample opportunity to get those 15 hours in every year. Other questions or issues that you have during this process, you're always welcome to contact me. I'll be providing the in-person training as well that you will attend. You can always contact your supported employment consultant or your IPS trainer. In your Dropbox, where there are all the resources, is a contact sheet for supported employment. And there you can find the information for your supported employment consultant. They cover certain regions of the state and are the go-between between supported employment agencies and the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. Because you are a part of IPS supported employment, you also have access to one of 4 IPS trainers. And these are people who are there specifically to support you and your agency in providing IPS supported employment. This ends the first online segment, overview of IPS supported employment in the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. You will need to complete the associated activities for this segment, complete the other online segments, and then I look forward to seeing you at the in-person training.